Hello and welcome to Sienna and Slate. The name Sienna and Slate pays homage to our ancestral ways of knowledge sharing. Sienna taken from the color of clay, from the earth that was used as a medium and a writing tool, and slate referencing a blank slate, a stone, or a tablet. These are the stories that don't get told anywhere else. Through a collective of deep conversation, storytelling, and sage advice, we celebrate the interconnected aspects of genius, resilience, scholarship, and well being for writers, thinkers, and doers. You're in the right place. I'm Dr. Keo, and in this episode, I share this space with Dr. Nicholas Hartlep. Dr. Nicholas holds the Robert Charles Billings Endowed Chair in Education at Berea College, where he also chairs the Education Studies Department. He serves on several state level and national level boards and committees, and he is the author and editor of over 25 books. So he has a lot to share with us today. Welcome to the show, Dr. Nicholas. I'm so glad we were able to connect and have you as a guest.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Keel, for having me. One, I feel special and honored to be on your show, and hopefully the conversation adds value to your listeners and viewers.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have no doubt that it will. No doubt at all. So, as we start our conversation, Um, where do you want to start? How did you get started in the work that you do? Tell us a little bit about what you're doing now.
Yeah, so I was born in Korea and I was adopted um, and came to the United States when I was a year and a half. And so I spent most of my life, all of my life, in the United States. Like a typical kid, went to college, and it was in college where I studied to be an elementary school teacher. I met my wife, got married, and have three daughters. Did graduate school, um, went on to get my PhD, but beyond that story in terms of there's details I would say of, to answer your question directly, is I've always been interested in race, and I've always been interested in education. And so when I studied to become a teacher, it wasn't until my master's degree that I really wanted to become a college professor, because I saw my education professors, their lifestyles, their profession, and I, got mentored. And I said, "Hey, what do I have to do to do your job?" They said, "Well,
Mhm.
Nicholas, continue doing what you're doing, teaching. You'll need a terminal degree, and then you'll apply for a tenure track position." Um, Along the way of wanting to become a good teacher, and then pursuing my PhD, which I was fortunate to finish, um, it was then next to be an administrator. And so
Mhm.
as a department chair, I am an administrator and faculty. I hold a
Yes.
faculty appointment, and at some point I have aspirations to become a dean of a college or school of education. Um, all of those experiences professionally really emanate from my personal experiences as a person of color. Um, Unlike perhaps, let's say, a black man who has black parents and grew up in the South or the Midwest, my experience as a person of color is a little different insofar
Mhm.
as my family, my adopted family, are white, and so the conversations that we had or didn't have look a lot different than perhaps another person of color who has biological parents of the same race. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about how those conversations shaped you.
Well, the conversations we didn't have definitely shaped
Yes.
me. The patterns, the observations, and so you know now looking back at my life, I realized I was a sociologist. I was a race scholar through my
Okay.
adolescence, through my childhood. I might not have a knowledge, a theoretical knowledge, but I had lived experience. And that lived experience tells me, right, um, how racism works, how power works, how winners and losers are determined oftentimes before a contest even happens, how meritocracy is false. Um, Really, the underbelly of democracy, of this perfect union, isn't so perfect. And as I've gotten older, I just turned 40 years old. As I've gotten older, my edges have softened a little bit. I've
Mm,
understood that you can't be fire and brimstone all the time because people tune out. And so
mhm.
wanting to nuance things, to have complex conversations, with a, a even tone, goes further. And so partially what I'm up to is, um, trying to create videos on YouTube, trying to write articles and books for an audience that has the opportunity to make change. So as an administrator, I'm wanting to write books for those hiring managers, those authorities in higher education, the provosts, the deans, the chairs, the division chairs, to effectively make change. And so one thing that people often think is they say, well, why do you want to change things? What's so bad about the way things are? And when someone asks that, you really know, um, where that person is and where the conversation really truly has to start. And that's
Yeah,
at
so
ground zero.
yeah, so you're talking about, writing and publishing these or even just putting out information about, being change agents and change. What is it that you see needs to be changed, or what's the message here that you want, to perpetuate or to get out for others to hear?
Well, this is where we might get spiritual, but as a
That's okay.
Christian,
It's
as a
welcome here.
Christian, I think of a legacy. And my belief is I have one life to live. And
Okay.
so what that means is I have a limited, finite amount of time. And so my
Absolutely.
legacy is not a CV of 26 books, 30 books, but it is what changes did I make to better humanity, to better.
Mhm,
And
mhm,
so it's also with my family. So that adoptive family, ended up divorcing, and that made a big impact on me because, as an adopted person, you have issues of abandonment. Um,
mhm,
so excuse me, thinking about my family, my marriage,
mhm,
I hope that I could maintain a marriage throughout my life. My vows are forever.
mhm,
But in terms of the work is about equity, justice, inclusion, and sense of belonging. So even being on this show was very special to me. Whenever a professor is invited to talk with someone, to write something, to
mhm.
give a keynote, that shouldn't be taken for granted. I never take it for granted. So even being on your show, I feel seen, I feel valued, I feel like I belong. And I followed some of the work that you're doing, and I look up to you
Yes.
because I think it's amazing. I think it's great, as a woman of color. And so sharing this dialogue with you, um, fills my bucket. But the work is to then use my bucket and pour out onto other people.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for that as well. So you brought up spirituality. So you know that some of my work, well, all of my work, uh, details elements of spirituality because I believe that there's an interconnectedness to all that we do. So spirituality is definitely welcome here in this conversation. And as you're thinking about this with your work, in connection with your work, how does that play out with your values and beliefs in talking about justice and equity and all of these things that you hold true, but also as you said you've turned 40. So then life starts to look differently on that other side of the coin, especially with time. So then how is that coming through in your work or the messages that you want to put out, especially for those that you're charting a path for that's coming after you?
Yeah. So when you think about oppression, um, racism, colonialism, all the
Mhm,
isms,
mhm.
they're built um, on context. And so let me unpack something for you.
Yeah.
Um, as an adopted person, there's parallels to this idea of not knowing your history.
Mm,
Um, and so not knowing your history is difficult because you can't formulate your identity. Well, as
mhm.
an adopted person, part of my story is I have reunited with my biological father. And that did a lot of healing for me because
Yes.
first off, I can see my father and, oh, I look like you. But another is to see what he's done. And so my biological father was a poor young man when he had me and had to give me up. But he
Mhm,
had difficulties with alcohol. He had
mhm.
difficulties with poverty. Spent time in jail. But the irony, I don't say the irony, the beauty that came from those ashes were he's now a pastor in Korea. So he's
Really?
preaching the word. He travels the world. I mean, this this father of mine, he travels more than any person I know internationally preaching. One time when I went and visited him in Korea, I visited a prison and he was preaching in the prison. And something, it's a little different, but in Korea, it's very homogenous, right? It's all Asian, it's
Mhm,
all Korean
mhm,
people. So prisons, when you think about it, if you were a non-Korean in prison, and let's say you have a different religion,
mhm,
that could present a difficult time for you.
mhm.
So from that experience, I saw my father in his element, and he's also written books. Talking to him about my grandmother and different things, and it puts me in context of having endurance, right? This idea. I'm a runner and a long distance runner, and as a person of color in higher education, we have to have endurance. So
Yes.
coming back to the question, my spirituality gives me endurance for this long race that I'm running. And there's
Mhm,
times when like I stop and I walk a little bit, and then there's times when then I start running again because of racism, because of disappointments. And I
mhm,
spirituality also helps me understand that these losses that I'm experiencing, like if I didn't get a job or I didn't get this article
mhm.
published, those aren't actually losses. Those are lessons learned and just not my time because there's
Okay.
something bigger in my future. And so and I firmly believe it. I don't believe that it is like Karl Marx says religion is the opiate of the masses. No, I believe in my faith holistically, right? And it helps me get through things. And also my mentors and femtors are a lot of them are deeply religious. Not all, but some are.
Mhm,
And
mhm,
they've really taught me and mentored me that this whole work isn't about Nicholas at all.
mhm.
Like, right? It's about a legacy.
Absolutely.
It's about the forerunners that have been doing this work. It's continuing. And if there's a gap, if someone fails to run, Lord, there's going to be generational problems
Yes.
coming down the line. So it is our obligation to continue running, even if we don't feel like it. We're sick, we're tired, we've experienced racism, and that's that brotherhood and sisterhood that helps me.
Mhm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, One thing that you're bringing up here is this uh, analogy or metaphor of using running, right? So running to keep going in the race and running to continue the work and all of this. So one of the things that you write and talk about is also battle fatigue. Yeah. So that element kind of is a a connection to battle fatigue as well. So, as faculty, as grad students, as those in academia and higher education, this is a unique and important topic because it's seen differently in our world than it could be seen in other places as well. Can you shed some light on your insights of battle fatigue and the effects of it on the person um, and how you bring yourself to do the work in this world when you feel the fatigue?
Yeah, it's definitely changed over time for me. So when you're an
Mhm,
assistant professor, when you're an associate professor, um, and it changes only because you have symbolic power. So the academy is such a hierarchical, patriarchal place that having certain things like these serve as
mhm,
firewalls, and even institutions vary. And so I would say that the battle I've faced at the various institutions that I've worked at a public, state, research focused
mhm,
institution. I've worked at a minority serving institution, and now I'm at a
mhm,
private liberal arts um, institution that has a deep
mhm.
history of justice. I would say that, and that this is partially the reason why faculty sometimes have a hard time, because these institutions were not created for people of color um,
Yes.
and women. And so when you get there after you finish that terminal degree and you're fortunate enough to secure your first job, you're disillusioned because you're like, oh well, I thought this was, we're all highly educated, we'll get along, and we learn the truth. But again, it's not about you or me, it's about that institution. And
Mhm,
so it's the institution that needs to change, not
mhm,
us. We're beautiful.
mhm.
We're brilliant. We have ideas. We have lived history. Um, and so thinking about the battle, what people do is they'll leave that institution. They'll go to another
Yes.
institution, and the battle might be different. They might like it and they'll stay. And so it's trying to find a place where you're honored, where your work is valued, where you can get along, and the challenge is you might be at a place where everything's fine and two things change in that situation. Maybe it's a new administrator hired, maybe
Mhm,
it's a new faculty member in the department.
mhm,
All of that's disrupted. You
mhm.
might have harmony, and then the next semester it's chaos. Again, it's not about you. You didn't do anything. It's the context. And so I see so many BIPOC faculty, um, even white faculty, all faculty searching for their home. And I don't know of any profession where the free agency is so rampant, even in professional sports. It's like you get a job and you're immediately looking for a new job.
Yes.
I think that is something that I would like to, at the right moment as an administrator, ameliorate for whatever institution hires me as that dean
Mhm,
or that chair, because maybe it's at Berea, I don't know. Because culture and sense of belonging is so vital.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
if there is racial battle fatigue being experienced, by definition, that is a space where there isn't belonging.
Mhm.
And we need to nip that in the bud.
So how do we do that?
Well, it sounds really complex, but it's not. I mean, that's the training, our doctoral training, we have to unlearn. It's called just being a good human being.
Mm,
It's intercultural, interpersonal relationships. It
mhm,
is, um, bringing in donuts for your colleagues to say, hey, I appreciate you. It's little things. And it is, I use the metaphor of gardening. You need to water your plants. You need to weed the weed bed, the flower bed, fertilize it. And the
Mhm.
moment we stop tending to our garden, we lose it, right? And so it
Mhm.
takes consistent, concerted, intentional effort by all members, by all members. Now, here's the thing. When we think of diversity and equity, we think of the race, culture, sexual orientation, religion, those things above the iceberg. But we
Sure.
really need to focus below the iceberg, beneath the water, in the sense that sense of belonging could be just saying, how's your family doing? Um,
Mhm.
um, Being friends on social media, liking each other's posts, going to, people in my department know the chapter in my life, my kids are doing softball. So they just check in on me. How are your kids' softball uh, tournaments going? Um, that's not the answer higher education wants, because education, right? If we solve the problem, we would lose our jobs. If we didn't have to train more PhDs, our PhD programs would be canceled and we wouldn't have a job. So the system is designed in a way, right? And in some good ways, right? So innovation, we want to innovate our ideas and our research. But when we think about culture and racism, when you think about it, it's quite simple to solve. It's difficult to get that result, though, is because the systems in place, like I said, have
Sure.
been.
Sure.
It's not a meritocracy. There is favoritism. Um, there is unequal opportunity, um, and we also need administrators with courage and backbones to
Mhm.
make the right decision and to remove toxic employees. Uh,
Mhm.
Younger Nicholas would never say that because, oh, I don't want to offend. No, you lose good employees by supporting bad employees. And by
Mhm.
bad employees, I mean, if you have a bigoted person or someone who is stirring the pot, that's not productive to the organization.
Mhm. Yeah. So you're talking about systems here, and people make up systems. So it's not necessarily that, and this is what I tell some of my grad students, right? So the work is hard, but the work is the work, right? The grad work is the work. That is the work. It's about you being able to look at yourself and say that I'm doing the work that I love to do, and I am doing it in a place that makes me also feel connected, feel like I am able to create, and then that I am able to contribute as well, right? So when we don't have those components, then we don't have a sense of belonging. If we don't feel connected, if we don't feel like we can create, and if we don't feel like we can contribute or our contributions are valued, then there is this feeling of lack that we have. And we often say that it's us. Something's wrong with me, right? So that's the work. That is the work. Something's wrong with me. It's not you, right? It is the system that you are in. Something's wrong with the system, right? So the things that are happening around us are going to happen, but we have to manage what's happening in us. And that is what I think you are saying and what I am saying and what I'm like perpetuating um this message of well-being, because if we continue or look inward to what we're doing, then individuals begin to change the system because we change ourselves and then we change and model what we need to see in the next person. And if we can model that and they can see that this can be good, then everyone can then do good and feel good in these spaces. But you're absolutely right that it's only one person. It's only a toxic person that can really disrupt. It's one move that can really disrupt a department and really make some changes for others to then say, well, this isn't what I thought it was going to be, or this isn't what I envisioned for my work. Right? I'm churning out these publications, or I'm doing this and I'm serving in this, but it's never enough. and I'm never being seen, and I'm never being heard, and I'm never being valued. So it's the connection, it is the creativity, and it's also the contribution that make up this space of me feeling like I am somewhere where I belong. So you're absolutely right in saying this. And it takes everybody to be self-reflective. It takes everyone to think, how am I contributing to this system? How am I contributing to these conversations? Right? And what am I bringing to the table, or what am I taking from the table and then not replenishing? Because we also take, but there are things that we have to bring back to replenish, right? So I love the conversation that we're having. I love the way that you're bringing this together with the work that you're intending to do in your next appointment, but also the work that you are working toward doing as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. The and and that there's the institution also sets the tone in terms of when we talk about these strategic visions and plans.
Mhm,
Um, you really, when you read those with a fine tooth comb, it really reveals the soul of the institution because
mhm,
the values that are codified in those plans, there's there's a timeline, there's a event
mhm,
horizon, and so if you dig beneath the veneer of the fanciful words,
mhm,
is this institution valuing research? Is this institution valuing student success, well-being, overall well-being? And post COVID, I see that faculty are burning out. There is this quiet resignation,
yeah.
disengagement. And
Mhm,
so it's kind of like, well, what's this next chapter going to look like?
mhm.
And so that's also that's exciting to me because there is so much work. There is no scarcity of work.
Yeah.
We need all scholars, all teachers, all administrators on
Mhm.
board to respond to this urgent need.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we're thinking about this as well, what would be some nuggets? What would be something that you can provide to maybe junior faculty, faculty, any level, grad students that are thinking that they want to do this work or whatever it is? What would be what would be the thing that you would tell them um, that maybe they would take and put in their pockets or put in their knapsacks or backpacks, um, that could sustain them in this work or at this time, or
Mhm.
anything that you've learned from your own journey?
Yeah. One thing is things will get better. So you might be in a hard spot now, but that won't last forever. That's temporary. So if you keep treading water, um, if you sometimes you don't need to tread water, you just need to get out of the pool. You
Mhm,
things will get better. You said keep the main thing. I would say that true. If you're, in a fixed term position and you aspire to be in a tenure track position, well, study that pattern, and that pattern is going to be teach your socks off, continue to write even though you don't have as much time as you'd like because you need to write and get your CV out there. And then if you're trying to level up, keep applying, keep growing. To your point, I think we're now in a creative age where the scholarship, yeah, you might need to do the grants and the publications, but podcasts, YouTube, other scholarly endeavors, keep producing, keep sharing. And I would share regularly. Don't be
mhm,
afraid to share a project in progress. Everything's not going to be a finished product,
mhm.
but you improve by doing.
Sure.
And then I would also say to have a sense of urgency. Um, you do have a limited amount of time. I mean, think
Mhm.
of your career. How long do you
Mhm.
envision working? And to treat that as a precious commodity.
Mhm.
Um, and then lastly, networking, not to receive, but um, to build relationships. One thing that I've learned, and it's crazy, I've learned this is probably other older people have learned this lesson too. You will get much opportunity from service. So when you serve, you'll
Mhm.
get opportunities that are outside of service. What do I mean by that? If you serve on a committee, you'll be on with a group of people talking about important issues, and you'll get to shape that. And oftentimes, what happens out of that is you get opportunities. It might be writing opportunities, it might be travel opportunities,
Mhm.
and it might be opportunities to be on a grant. And so sometimes, if you want to go this way, going this way actually will lead you to this way. And for me, keep your faith. But I know all listeners and viewers might not have a faith, but some type of mental, spiritual well being is important.
Mhm. Absolutely. So I can hear someone saying, "That sounds good. That sounds like a good plan. However, I am the only Black scholar in my department, or I am facing microaggressions at all sorts of levels, or there's so much coming at me and I am a target. And for me to keep treading is detrimental to my health, right? What do we say then?"
I would say you need to leave that area. Um, I've heard a mentor tell me, give it a year if you don't try to make those things, but you're wasting time. Sometimes, I don't know what the research says, but it does take a couple cycles for you to be on the job market to leave. And so
Mhm.
understand that too. Like you should implant that in your mind. Like I do want to leave, but my exit strategy might be a 1 to 2 year exit strategy. We know
Mhm.
psychologically when people are experiencing racial battle fatigue, um, a way to protect our mental health is to detach and depersonalize. It's a coping strategy, right? From psychological trauma. Um, it might mean you're not in the office because right, you're safer in other environments. But I would connect with people outside of your workplace for solidarity, to vent and process, to grieve,
Mhm.
and then also your EOP. All places, all employers have certain mental health um, resources available.
Mhm.
Um, I have unfortunately seen cases of suicide and
Mhm.
other um, really sad outcomes because of this. And so I do take that seriously. I am not one to subscribe to this whole grit idea of like you just tough it out. If it
Mhm.
is
Mhm.
unhealthy and toxic, by definition, the institution is failing the employees because that
Yes.
is the first obligation of the institution is to have a safe work environment. And if it's not safe, and the institution knows it, that's on them. They have a legal obligation to improve the
Mhm.
situation. But for those people that say, but I am the only, I totally get it. And you need to get out as soon as possible. The
Mhm.
building is on fire. You need to leave.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. So, as we begin to wrap up our conversation here, we have an off the cuff segment where people send in random questions. And so, this is a random question from Jessica in Carolina. It looks like South Carolina. It looks like. So, her question is Let me see here. Her question is, how do I get support for my own research that's outside of the box?
Yeah. So I'm hearing the spirit of the question. The first is, like all good researchers, it's not enough to just have a great idea from the scholarly
Mhm.
side. Another is you need to be resourceful. So sometimes the resources are there given, if you're doing, what's popular and trending, STEM research or whatever, there's going to be
Yeah.
pots of resources. If it's something outside of the box, to use this person's language, you might have to be creative. And so that requires being an investigator. So you need to set your
Mm,
project down, and now you need to think like an entrepreneur. How do I get funds? How do I solve this problem? And your problem might be, I need a budget, right?
mhm,
So things that I've done practically, is I've done Google alerts for certain topics, and keywords, in terms of fundraising, philanthropy. There's a
mm,
lot of philanthropy, um, news outlets that publish essentially press releases of people who've received grants, and you can
mhm,
subscribe to different ones. So if it's art based or psychology or neuroscience, whatever your field is, those niche markets, you'll get an alert. Why would that be helpful? Well, you might get an alert on a Friday afternoon that UNC Chapel Hill professor got $6 million for such and such, and it might tie to your project. So you could reach out
mhm.
to that principal investigator and say, hey, I know you just got a grant. I'm working on this project. Maybe we could collaborate. Lastly, I would say is, um, we're now in a day and age of athletes doing NIL and all this. I think
Yes.
faculty and academics need to do similar. What I mean by that is approaching, private agencies, different, foundations, and pitching, cold call pitching, emails or calls to say, or benefactors, I have this project, I need $50,000. This is how it will help students, or this is how it will
Mhm,
help society. Um, Basically, become a venture capitalist trying to find money for your project.
mhm.
Um, it needs to be relentless, right? And it's hard to beat someone who never gives up. And if you're the biggest cheerleader and champion for your project, which you will have to be, because
Yes.
you'll get probably 20 no's before you get a maybe or a think about
Mhm.
it. That's those are the strategies I would say. And then there again, understand it might be a 1 to 2 year project. Um, the same is true for writing. I have cases where, you mentioned I've written a lot of books, edited books. I have a list, a notebook of all the book ideas. And
Yes.
sometimes, you have 1 to 50 on the list, and now you're at 48, and it's like, "Well, why aren't you doing book number 2?" It's like, you
Uh-huh.
don't understand, it's not sequential. This is just, a sandbox of ideas. And so,
Yes.
um, just never give up on your project is what I would tell the person.
Yeah, I love the same box of ideas because as you, I have a list of things. And you sometimes have to let the idea breathe and then come to life, right? It's going to take some time. The seed has been planted with the idea. Right? So, with the idea in your mind, you write it down and then you let it breathe and you let it come to fruition and you let it, grow and do all the things that the seed needs to do in order to grow. And then when it's time, and that may be through a series of things that you need to learn. That may be through meeting people that will then help you build on that project and get to the next step. But as you let it then evolve, yeah, you're absolutely right. It may not be that you're on project number two, right? It may be that you're coming down the list and saying, oh my gosh, now is the time for this project because this is happening. So yeah, I definitely think that we should write the projects down, that you should write all of your thoughts down because those are nuggets of wisdom as well. right? So we don't always see why we need this or always see what's happening in the moment. But then when we reflect and look at it from, oh my gosh, this is what happened in 5 years. I never anticipated this happening. Then we can see what is happening on the under the iceberg, as you said. Or
Well, and now is a perfect time. Just reflecting on the last book we just submitted.
uh-huh.
That was actually 1 year, essentially 1 year. And it was a part of my vision board. So now with New Year's, everyone will have their New Year's resolution. I would tell listeners to your show to keep their vision board, update it, and then
Mhm.
stay true to those resolutions. See it through. Give it 1 year. I've heard people say, if you write a paragraph each day, 365 paragraphs, you have a novel, right? And the
Yes.
same is true for your visions and your projects. Like you said, if you sow that seed and you water it daily, after one
Mhm.
year, you're going to have a full on plant, maybe even a
Mhm.
tree, maybe a bamboo
Mhm.
tree. But so um, never giving up on the projects and seeing them to completion. I think I've heard it say that writers, another synonym for a writer is a completer. A
Mhm.
writer is someone that sees a project to completion. Um,
Mhm.
my YouTube channel, trying to do a relaunch, that was a year out. I gave myself a year and I said, hey, I'm going to stockpile this content. I'm going to do it the right way. And so,
Yes.
here in the new year, when I start rebranding my YouTube channel, we will see
Mhm.
if that 1 year of investment pays off. I have hope that it will. I
Mhm.
so good things take time. Let's put it that way.
It does. It absolutely does. And so you brought up your YouTube channel. So where can we find you? What is this YouTube channel? Where can we find you? Where can we support you? How can we support you?
You can support me by subscribing. And there again, it's not about Nicholas and a number of subscribers or what have you. To me, the idea, the theory behind my new rebranded YouTube channel is to connect and network with scholars to share knowledge and add
Mhm.
value, to put
Mhm.
out professional grade, high quality shorts, long form videos that pertain to issues of mentoring, educational leadership in K 12 and also higher ed,
Yes.
current events, how to write, essentially
Mhm.
all things scholarly and professorial. And
Absolutely.
and so you could help by subscribing, sharing videos. You can find it just going into on your phone, YouTube in the app and search my name, which is on
Mhm.
the screen, and you'll find the channel. And then you can subscribe and encourage other people. Organic growth, so I've been told. And the best way of organic growth is doing what we're doing, Dr. Keo, um, talking together. And same for me. How can I support CNN Slate? I'll share it on my platforms, and we'll have to do
Absolutely.
a video having you on my YouTube channel.
Absolutely. It is the connection. It is the connection that's how we get the work done. Yes. Thank you so much. I appreciate you for spending time with us today. Is there anything, any last nugget that's on your heart that you feel you need to share with us?
Yeah, I would say stay positive. Stay positive. You can do it. We can do it.
Mhm.
You want to go far, go with people. If you want to go
Yes.
fast, go alone. You need to go with people. If you want to be on my YouTube channel, send me a note. You can find me. If you want to be on CNN and Slate, talk with Dr. Keo. I'm sure she'd
Yeah.
love to have you. But support one another.
Mhm.
And we're shooting this in December 2023. I
Mhm.
hope that 2024 is a banner year for all listeners, for you, for
Yes.
me. Um, Heck, coming out of COVID, things got to get better. Things got to be better. Uh,
Yes, for sure. And right now we feel like it's the end of the season, the end of the semester, the end of the year. So we feel like we're running, running, running. But
Yes.
right, and then 2024 is just right here at our door, and we are welcoming it and all
Yes.
the good things that are going to come with it. I am in agreement with you when you say that for sure. So we will have all of your information, all of your show notes in the episode, so then people can find you and click on you and find everything they need to know about you. So, as Dr. Nicholas has said, listen, subscribe, and share both of our podcasts and our platforms with others that need to hear this. And if you want to be a guest on our shows as well, reach out to us. You can find Dr. Nicholas's information in the show notes, and you can reach out to us at CNN Slate at hello@cnnslate.com. And as we end our time together, we pray that you are well, we pray that you are healthy, and we pray that you are doing the work that you are intending and called to do at this time. So be well and take care.